when I hear transparency, it's more of have data available for different parties and to make sure that this data is clear and the data is recognized and that different parties can have access to it. And we have tools that allows to do that, or you can build a tool that allows different parties to understand the data and see transparently how it works. So that is what I think about transparency. If you have your data and you make it available for different partners, that is how you can start building transparency.
Welcome to the Pubway podcast. Each episode will showcase a conversation with a leader from the publishing world. If you're working at a publisher, a DSP or SSP, or you're just curious about the media industry and want to sit down and pick the brains of the experts from within the publishing space, then this is the show for you. Hello, and welcome to the Pubway podcast. My name is Tina Iannacchino.
And I'm Mike Villalobos. And in today's episode, we're actually going to dive into everything data management, everything from what it is, how it's used, why it's used, and how it's applicable to our publishers today.
Absolutely. And it's my pleasure to introduce my friend, Katherine Tuluzova, who is the CEO of Sigma Americas. Hi, Katherine. How are you?
Hi, guys. I'm good. I'm so excited to be with you. I listen to your podcast and I really feel like celebrity now because, thank you so much.
Celebs only here is the main requirement of the podcast. Just kidding.
Big hitters being only the guests.
Yes, exactly. But no, Katherine, it'd be great for you to tell the audience a bit more about your background and also just about who Sigma is for anyone who's unfamiliar.
Sure. So, Sigma Software is a software development company, and one of our main focus is Adtech. So we've been working with, everyone in the industry for the last 15 years. And, that is, a big focus for us. And we have a lot of experience there. I am CEO. I've been with Sigma for 16 years and I started as a developer. So I have, I would say, some knowledge about how, software development works. And, that is, I think, my main background. So I see Adtech from a different lens than most of other people in the industry, I would say, because I see it from the purely software lens. So when I think about Adtech, I think about software that is underneath it. And I think it's an interesting perspective that is not that common.
So, you've been pretty much building this from the ground up as a developer and now CEO on the commercial side, right? So it's intriguing to understand your lens, but why do you feel data management or data as a business in our marketplace has taken such a good, strong foothold for publishers and advertisers alike?
Yeah, I think that what was interesting and love this idea. I was at Biller's base camp in March, I think, and someone told me that publishers are forced to become data businesses. And that is a very interesting, thought. And, when you think about it, it really is huge change from being just a publisher and thinking about content and quality of content to, and in most cases, even outsourcing monetization in a way, right? To actually starting to build this huge product because to have data inside your to have a data and to use it, you actually need to build data product. And it's like a big paradigm shift. So I think that is really interesting. So, but honestly, I think that, by the way, I don't know if you recall or not, but when we, had our initial talk, I said something like, with cooking going away, but I'm not sure if that's going away or not. But is with cooking going away, it, everyone needs to think about data. And then kind of 2 hours after we talked, yes, I'm a prophet. I was like, just. But in general, what I think that there is two directions why data is important. One is definitely, aftermath of cookie, and we know that cookie will be going away just more gradually. I think the overall sentiment that the cookie will be going away, with user consent, which just will take probably longer. So we still will face that reality we were all, dreading to face sooner than later. It will be later, but I think it will still happen. So it's still, consideration, it's not going away anywhere. But I think on the other hand, we see the rise of AI, and AI is as good as your data is. So if you have so many more opportunities to improve, your business and the way you do business, if you use AI tools, and you need good data to use that with them. So the way I think about it is that in several years, it will be a situation that if you're not using AI in some shape or form, you probably will be behind people who are using it. So it's like it's not. I don't think it's on your doorstep just yet. But I think it will be soon. So it's good to start thinking about that direction. So these two things I think are reasons for everyone to think, okay, so what do I do with my data? Do I want to go there? Do I want to become more data-oriented business or not? I would say that for most businesses, not even net tech, it's more of, yes, you probably need to start being more data-oriented.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that also brings up a great next question is how does a company then become a more data-driven business?
Mm-hmm.
And if you could give examples for both kind of the publisher side and the advertiser side, as I'm sure there's overlap, but there's probably definitely differences to what they both care about.
So for the publishers, and again, like we need to understand what it is to be like data business, right? I don't know the good definition. So my definition is, yes, my definition is if you are using data for either increasing your existing revenue or for getting a new line of business using your data. So I think like two things: either you use your data and you increase your revenue, or you're using your data for just additional line of business. So I think that is when you do this, your data business, because we all work with data one way or another. But if it I'm already CEO. For me, like if it doesn't affect revenue, it's probably not that important. So, but that is how I think about it. And if we talk about publishers, I think that is I would say like three things that you can do, right? So first one would be to obviously use your data to make your inventory more lucrative, essentially to add additional data and send it up the stream, right? So that is first thing. Second thing is essentially, and that is where AI, by the way, might work, is to make some data-driven decisions about your business. So, for example, analyze which content is more, people read more, to see, how to make people, stay longer on the page. And I think there's like a lot of different things you can gather from analyzing, huge sets of data, right? So that is the second thing. And third thing is essentially like sell anonymized data, right? So it's another thing that there is a marketplace like in Snowflake to sell data. So there's maybe you have some data that being anonymized is interesting for someone to purchase, because it's also additional line of business. So for publisher, I think that is kind of how that's the way I think you can leverage data. For advertisers, I think it is a little bit different, because I think for what I think advertisers want, they want to optimize their spend always, right? So, it's our business, right? So I think for advertisers, I would assume the best thing about being like data driven is actually like to make data driven decisions about how you spend, and to see some additional insights about like what you're doing, how you're doing, and how you can optimize what you're doing.
Small tangent. So I actually this morning I read about a couple of CEOs who are actually taking a stance against AI, which is interesting, right? Mainly on the creative side. So I think creative can also play within the publisher lens, but also on the advertising side, the copy that's being put in front of an ad, right? Do you feel that there'll be kind of a check and balance, at least on the creative side, when it comes to the generative AI component? Granted, there are multi variations of AI application, but would love to hear your lens on how's data going to be applied to like the subjective nature of art and how we look at copy.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because what I was referring to was mostly analyzing your your results, right? So just receiving all the data, how you where you put your ads, what are their results that you're seeing. So that is what I was thinking about advertisers. Obviously, there is additional side, which is creative, and this is a question. This is a tricky question, to be honest. So I think that And by the way, I'm actually a part of IAB committee on AI. So I hope that we will be able to, provide some guidance on how to do it right. So I think like with everything in the world, AI is a tool and it depends on how we use it. I do think there is a way to use AI in a very creative way when it's very helpful and it helps creativity. And there is definitely, kind of maybe more ways to abuse it. So and obviously it's it is possible to abuse AI and to do to detriment to creativity. And I'm sure that as we get more and more that in our industry, we will always have good players that are trying to do it for the good, and we always have bad actors who will try to avoid all possible regulations to do it in a way that is just like helps gain revenue without bringing additional value to anyone. So but I don't think there is any way possible that we can make a stand against AI and be like let's just make sure it doesn't happen to us. It will happen to us, like it's just not possible.
Yeah. And I mean, I think obviously like a industry framework or guideline would be massively helpful. But in the meantime, I think it's really on the companies who are producing the generative AI to only maybe limit it to like the production part and not do it in real time, because then you're kind of leaving it to the mercy of the AI. You still have the human overlords kind of approving what the AI is creating in the production phase before anything is pushed in a live environment. I believe that's what we do.
For sure.
For our own little Seedtag plug.
Small plug, yeah. I think that leads to I think a good clarification point and question to get your perspective on is, when you produce these models, they're only as good as the cleanliness or the hygiene of the data itself. So that has to be managed by some sort of platform, right? So would love, given that Sigma is in this realm, I'd love to have your insight into, one, for our listeners who are new to advertising, what is a data management platform? And then two, how does that play into the cleanliness application and then the production of models or whatever it may be the usage for?
Yeah. So, when we think about data, like what do we need to do with data? So first we need to collect it, right? Then we need to prepare and normalize it, right? So because whenever we receive data in huge amounts, it's usually not normalized and not prepared. There's a lot of mess and a lot of like kind of noise, right? So the third thing is essentially analyze it, and then we need to visualize it, right? So that is kind of things that we need to do with data, right? So first we need to collect it, and then the second very important step is to have a system that normalize it. By normalize it, I'm not sure how you're familiar with the term, because it's very software engineering term, but I'm not sure maybe people also know this term.
Yeah, like standardize it, because it's a bunch of different data sets, so you have to blend it together in a way that
nomenclatures, whatever it may be.
Essentially, you need to look for contradictions inside the data and decide how to resolve them. So that is essentially what is happening, right? So, and also we need to make sure that usually it might be that your data alone might not be enough, and you want to augment it with like some additional sources of data, right? And then it's even harder because that data might be in a different format, and you need to have this process that kind of ties all things together and creates this creates your data in a format that makes sense and that is usable for whatever you're doing next with this data. So I think that what is very important, and I think what is lacking a lot when people first start to think about having like data management platform, is having really good understanding of the goals. Like, how are we going to use this data? So usually people just think, let us collect whatever we have and then store it and think what we can do with it. I literally heard this sentiment so many times. And if there's like one thing I would love to change out of this podcast, is that people stop doing that, because that is a mistake, because usually you have too much data, and if you even just storing all that data is very expensive. So what happens is people just do that, store data for 3 months, get like a bill from their like cloud provider for someone, and they're like, oh my god, what are you going to do with that? And then a lot of people just actually shuts down their data platforms because it's just not manageable. So that is like other people, would start to think, how to reduce the bill. But that is like in a very, very common path to spend like in the first 3 months of just like burning through cash on storing data that you don't need. So that is something that I would suggest always start with thinking like what you're trying to achieve and why you're trying to achieve it. Remember, I said that going to be like, this like data business is actually going to have a product. So you need to start thinking like a company that is building a product. And company that is building a product rarely think, oh, just let's do something random and see how it goes, right? It's not how we build products, right? We have strategy when we build products, right? We sit down and say, okay, so here's our business goals. You need to essentially always find your market fit with every product. Same with your data product. It's usually a little bit easier because they are similar between different, so let's say like if something works with one publisher, it probably can work with other publishers as well. So it's a little bit less of a problem, but it's still very important to understand what is our market fit. And by market fit, I think, okay, so we're going to have this data product. Is it internal or external? If it's external, do we know how to sell it? Do we have enough, like pipeline of a customer that are interested in whatever we are having additionally? If it's internal, are we sure that augmented, for example, our data, like our, anything in this way that we plan will bring us revenue, and can we forecast how much, right? So these are our questions that you need to ask when you thinking about what is my data platform. And then when you have this question answered, then you have a good understanding, okay, so for me to be able to do this, I actually need this kind of data, right? And then you can ask the questions, do I have this data, or do I need to go somewhere else to adjust it? And then you can go further and answer other questions, which would be like, okay, what is the cheapest way for me to do it? Because there's a lot of ways to do it. You can use a lot of different, there's in a lot, just like in a, I don't know how to explain how many tools there are now that can help you to build this, or to either collect or process your data. Some of them are extremely good and extremely expensive, and most likely if you use them, you will have much less problems, but most likely it might not be feasible to pay the fees for these tools and still receive that uplifted revenue that you're expecting. On the flip side, those tools that are open source that are also good tools, but you will need a team of engineers that will build and support it, and it's another cost. But you can, if you know what you need, you can sit down, evaluate the cost, and see actually if this product makes sense. It just makes sense to build this product.
Absolutely. And I think that's also a very important point a lot of people don't consider is the team that it's going to take to manage the DMP. Everyone kind of focuses on the DMP and the astronomical cost that's usually associated with it, depending on your need. And they completely forget of like the 15 to 20 people you need to just manage it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I think that, again, if we even go back from like DMP just to software development, I think a lot of people still think about, especially people who are not, that into software development. I know you probably don't think so, but people who were not doing software as a main part of their business feels that building software is a project. Actual building software is a process, meaning that you can never end it. Like you can build DMP, but it will never be like finalized. You will always need to add more things. You will have new requests. Things will be, get broken. APIs will change, and you will always need to support it. Like you will need this team stay with your DMP as long as you have this DMP. And I think a lot of people do not understand it, and just do not understand how big of effort this is. So this is another thing you need to calculate. Like, okay, so what kind of team do I need? And even further, how do I get this team? Because imagine if you're like sitting there, you never had, data engineering team, you have no one in your team, who has experience, how you even, interview these people, how you get them on board, how you understand that it's good people who can make decisions about how to build your platform, right? So this is another question that is kind of, you need to answer yourself, because it is a kind of hard discipline. I would say that because, we're hiring developers, I don't know, dozens of developers every month. And I would say that hiring data engineers is one of the hardest part. It's harder to hire a good data engineer than full stack engineer or someone else. So it is a hard discipline. So the question is like, how do you, how do you get these people? I mean, I know the answer. I would, advise people, but so you just can come to us, obviously. But but I think it's a good thing to think about it, like how you build this team that you need and how much this team will cost you.
And Catherine, quick question. So there's already a lot of complexities that play into choosing a solution and then obviously building on that solution. And you mentioned the iteration that comes with that. Like many things in business and generally within life, to be honest, not being existential. What takes you from 0 to 100 is 100 to 250 or 300, and there's always a step function in progression. So say you grow out of a certain solution or what you're currently doing with your data today. What are the complexities that play into migrating into a new DMP, or maybe it's even a cloud-based solution as well, going from like one data center to another, right? Would love to hear your recommendations and just feedback thoughts around how to avoid some of the common mistakes, but also what should someone be aware of on a personnel side and tech side as well.
Data migration is one of the hardest projects, to migrate data, because there is usually a lot of it, and there's usually have problems with formats. So I think that in my experience, there is already some tools that help you with migration. And I would first try to see because let me put it this way. So let's say if you asked me this question like 10 years ago, I would say, okay, so here's how you do it. Now you have one data storage, another. You write a lot of like kind of jobs that would just not copy one to another. You need to make sure you need to go in a certain order so that there's not conflict. So there's a process that we would do 10 years ago. If you ask me about it now, I would say we will not do it manually. We will see what is the best tool, and again, depending on like where you're migrating. A lot of if you're like migrating to certain providers, they will already have some inbuilt migration options. So they will have their own small tool that helps migrate from different other vendors. But there are definitely tools that can help you do this to some extent. Then there's another tool that will help you normalize data that you will, because after you move it, most likely you lost some of the things, or you move them incorrectly, or now they're not in the same formats. And there are tools that actually can help you to look through your new data storage and analyze how that data is currently stored and highlight any conflicts. And you can essentially manually review the old storage and the new storage and see how to resolve them. So I would say that and then maybe there might be some part that needs to be done manually, but we would after that, and some checks and balances needs to be done after that. But in general, I would say that you definitely need to, if you have a lot of data, you definitely need to think about using some existing tools to do that. That's migration.
And for the personnel view, do you think it's important to have like a separate team solely dedicated to the migration, or can you do it in like project-based piecemeal? What do you think?
It depends on a lot of
putting you in a hard one. Sorry.
I would say that in general,
yeah,
software engineers work best when they have one goal. So it's common that they were researched. So engineers were researched a lot, and when it is kind of known in my industry, like in software engineering, that you need to put engineer to one task and don't touch him and just give him coffee or her, and then it's results, right? So when you start to do this, ask to do different tasks, that is when you get decrease of performance. That is again something that a lot of frameworks about how to build software are built around that knowledge that it is best to to make software when you're not doing it, not being interrupted. So because essentially, by the way, doing software is closer to art than science. So, and when you need to create some form of art, it's usually better if you not draw two paintings at the same time, but draw one painting and then another painting. So in that regard, it's actually better to have another team. Just have a team focused on that process. That's been said, more often than not, it's not possible because you do not have enough bandwidth for the team. In this case, it is still definitely possible to make this project just like as a part of ongoing thing that's happening.
Makes sense. So switching gears more to the publisher lens, I guess. How would you recommend someone monetize their data? You mentioned this at the Bueller Summit that they said that every publisher should be a data partner or a data business. What do you recommend for the monetization piece? Because we all know, we're in business for not just friends, also for money. So would love to get your perspective there.
Again, I think we can get back to what you can do with your data, right? So and I'm not necessarily have an advice, if I were a publisher, what I would do, right? So I'm not sure, but you can obviously think about three lenses, right? So can I get more from my existing traffic? Can I get more traffic, or can I just get this data and sell it somewhere, right? So there's three lenses, and I'm not sure how to, I think it really you really need to sit down with your team and see what are available options in every of these lenses. But then I want to say that again, if you're a publisher and you identify something that that okay, well, that's what I want to do, you obviously have a huge range of options how to do it. So from actually find a partner who will just do monetization of this additional data for you, right? I think that is always availability. It always comes with with a price tag and with kind of maybe lack of control of what you're doing, right? But you can obviously do this all the way to building completely new product and operating it, right? So there's this is huge spectrum how to do it, and I think that it is it goes back to you need to think about it as a product and sit together, and you need to find, I think what I can advise is actually find someone who can go through options with you, right? So when you sit together and say, okay, so that is probably we want to do this, what it would cost to build it, what team do we need, let's sit together, understand how it could be possible, what options do we have. And so find someone within your team or outside of your team who can sit with you and analyze all these possible solutions, and then you can understand if this works for business or not.
Yeah, and I think obviously it'll depend partner to partner, publisher to publisher too, the amount of first party data they have versus second party versus third party, their own direct sales efforts, if they're only buying programmatically, there's a lot of different levers there for a publisher to evaluate to help them identify kind of the right partners for that data monetization. But I would also like to ask you, so I think when you are looking at DMPs, I guess, when you're looking at the different solutions, what kind of data sets, I guess, are the most transparent that those solutions need to provide back to be as transparent as possible with publishers when they're looking at their data?
I'm trying to think about transparency in a way that I think when I hear transparency, it's more of have data available for different parties, and to make sure that this data is clear and the data is recognized and that different parties can have access to it. And we have tools that allows to do that, or you can build a tool that allows different parties to understand the data and see transparently how it works. So that is what I think about transparency. That and that is what is kind of, if you have your data and you make it available for different partners, that is how you can start building transparency.
Yeah, it probably also maybe is more so about flexibility for these platforms, versus a very structured way of working. They have to be able to adapt to their specific clients' needs based on the data that they're bringing.
I'd even push to say it's how you create the data set, right?
Yeah.
Or where you got it from.
Yeah.
Because there's some very not nefarious, but questionable data sources at times. I won't name any at this point in time, but there was at one point a profile was online of mine that said I was 68 and from Ohio, which I don't know what that says about me, to be honest. But
I don't know what you're searching for.
This is what I'm saying. I'm from California. What does it mean?
Well, I think that again, this takes you back to your goals and your decisions. So because essentially, if you're building your own data platform and you augment your data with something, you can definitely choose and pick and choose what sources you are using and what sources you are not using, right? So, and you can also probably use an AI, make some good checks about the quality of the data, right? So it is definitely, if that is something that is of concern, then we definitely can, that is a way to build it, inside the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with all of this data, how does Sigma Software specifically approach the integration of it all, first party, second party, third party, to kind of ensure accurate and comprehensive audience profiling? I feel like because that's always very top of mind for publishers.
Yeah, so I think that it is important to understand what Sigma Software is doing, and essentially we are doing software in the way that we are told to. So what we can do is make sure that we augment all the data, all the available data, and that it is connected in the best possible way, and that there is like no errors, or like it's possible to have no errors, but there's like not a lot of errors, or like as minimal as possible amount of errors in these data sets. So that is what we can do. However, then how to build audiences and how to build good audiences on top of that, or how to create any kind of rules for structure this data is outside of what we are usually doing the scope of that. So what we can do is, whenever you tell us, we want to connect this data and this is the rules that we want to apply to this data, we can do it for you and just give it to you in the best possible way. So, but how to build audiences is not a question I have an answer to.
That's fair. I mean, I think it varies across the solution. Taking a leap forward, whether big or small, up to you. Since you're the one answering this question, what are the trends that you see with data management platforms, customer data platforms? I mean, all kind of cousins or siblings, if you will. What is the next evolution within data management for publishers and advertisers alike? And again, it can be big or small. You can take you're the prophet, not me, as we established.
Here's the deal. I think that what we all, I feel, understood in this past several years, that in a lot of situations, we actually do not have enough data. There is like no way to augment it or do anything about it. You just don't know things about your user, right? So you just don't know anything and you don't have enough data. And, you can augment it again in a lot of different ways and do a lot of probabilistic kind of analysis, but still in a lot of situations, just not good enough. You don't have enough signal. So what started to happen, right, is that a lot of publishers started to think, how do I get enough additional data, right? How do I get more information? And we have, this like new trend of having more, first party data. And again, you cannot just, like make people give you data unless you give them some additional value why they want to do it. So I think what is happening is that in a lot of ways, publishers are forced to become more than a publisher, become some kind of, portal, some kind of platform that people use and stay and have additional value out of it. And I think this is a very good, although uncomfortable sometimes, trend, right? So that you need to think what else you can do for your users so that you have kind of more opportunities to have, to collect more valuable, meaningful data. And then when you have this more data, you can use all these wonderful tools available to augment this data and then have this like great, like audience profiling. So I think it will move. So we will move towards having, platforms. We will move towards, with this additional value of, additional value that will help publishers to get more first party data. So I think we're moving there.
Yeah. And I mean, as you mentioned earlier in the conversation, the rise of AI too. There's only so much we can predict and where it'll be helpful, harmful, probably a little of both, but we'll be here for it all.
Why not?
Amazing. Well, Katherine, this has been so lovely speaking with you. I think it's super helpful for our audience to kind of pull the curtain back on the word data. For such a simple word, it does cause a lot of headache to a lot of people who aren't as familiar.
But I would love to know, to kind of close out our conversation, is what's on your bookshelf? Like, what are you reading right now? Are you still in the data zone, or have you branched out?
No, it's not about data. So I actually have this book on me. So it's called Poker Workbook. I'm preparing because we're going to have our third annual Attack Poker Night on 6th of October.
Is that an invite, or are we just... I'm kidding.
You are totally invited. I mean, I just know that, I decided to make it serious now, and I'm reading about how to be good at poker. So please come prepared.
I love it.
Have our own right man.
There goes my money.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you can actually come in and not play poker. A lot of people choose to come and just enjoy the night.
Observe. Wonderful. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you again for the time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we cross paths again soon before the poker night.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, guys.